Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and I'm back with my week of reading wrap-up, where I talk about the books that I read, what I'm currently reading, and then potentially could read next week based on my mood. I have been absolutely loving Nonfiction November. This has turned into such a joy. My reading explorations have taken me in so many different interesting directions, and I can't wait to share them with you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have 5 that I've read recently that I want to share. So let's talk about the first one. So a few of these that I'm reading for Nonfiction November, and I'll put a link to my Paula Possibilities video below because I had a ton, and I talk about all of these books there. A lot of these came from Shakespeare and Company's Year of Reading. So in the Year of Reading bundle that they do, they'll send you 3 packages throughout the year, and you'll have a set of books in each package and a few other little lovely things. I did that during the pandemic because I wasn't traveling, and it just kind of gave me something to look forward to, but I've decided to not do it for this next year. But that's allowed me to get caught up on some of the books that I did purchase through that program. So the first book that I finished is this book. This is Eric Newby's A Short Walk in the Hindu Kush. It's a really beautiful, beautiful cover. And this is set in 1956, and we've got Eric Newby coming up with this idea on a lark that he wants to explore and to basically climb the Hindu Kush. And it ends up feeling like a cross between Cheryl Strayed's Wild and without the grief. So substitute the grief for snobbery and kind of elitism and colonial legacy thinking, right? And that's kind of what you get here. So it's a month-long adventure going from London into Afghanistan by these 2 guys that really don't know what they're doing, but they're kind of snobbish, and they're British, and so there's a sense of they can do anything, and they've got money and the ability to kind of take this on. So it's funny because there is a little bit of recognition that they're in over their head, and self-deprecating humor in here, which it makes a difference, right? There's a difference between someone who's doing it and doesn't realize it, and someone who at least knows enough to laugh at themselves and to know how ridiculous it is. Though they really shouldn't do it in the first place, but that's another story. I did enjoy some of the nature writing and some of the situations they got themselves in, but ultimately this feels really dated. And, the sense of kind of machismo, as well as colonialism, as well as just kind of the snobbery. I can see why it was loved at the time, but it really has not, I don't think has kind of has a lasting impact. So yeah, I think I'm gonna hand this back, even though it was one of my Shakespeare and Company books from that year of reading bundle. But I think I need space on my shelf for something else. So glad I read Eric Newby because I've heard so much about him, but I think this might be my one and only. So if you've read any that you think is a little bit better, let me know. I'm open. Here's one that I was really looking forward to, but I feel like the premise of it just didn't work for me. This is The Premonitions Bureau, a true story by Sam Knight. I got this on my trip through Europe in the spring. I got this at Daunt Books. I wanted to love this. The idea being that there was a bureau in London that was set up to look at ESP and to evaluate ESP. And there were a couple people that specifically were able to register and identify things before they happened. So I heard a good press about it. I heard a bunch of buzz, so I thought it was going to be really great, but it really was not, didn't hold together for me. It really kind of went really wide. The scope became about a few different people. We start with a doctor, Dr. John Barker, and he's at this very famous hospital, kind of mental ward. And he has modern ideas and modern sensibilities. And then he's paired with a reporter, and the reporter and he are connected after this tragedy that happened, very famous tragedy, the Aberfan disaster, and I hope I'm saying that right. And what happened, there was a coal tip that had horrible effects. It created this horrible disaster, like a landslide that killed a lot of children. It really destroyed a schoolhouse, and a bunch of children died, and it was a horrible, horrible thing that happened. It was predicted by a couple people that it was going to happen in very interesting ways. So the investigative reporter found the story, these guys connected, and then they created this bureau where people could write into the local paper, and the paper would then evaluate which ones were authentic or not. Now, what didn't work for me is we got a lot of backstory about these two personalities. We got a lot of winding around the story and kind of buffering it out instead of kind of getting straight to it. And so I kind of lost the plot a couple times. Like, where are we going with this? Why is this in here? That meandering really didn't help me make it more interesting. It kind of took me off my interest from it. So I'm a little bit bummed that didn't work out because I had very high expectations. Here's another one that, oh my God, I wish I'd never read this. Oh God. There's times when, you really like an author and then you read something. This often happens on things like Twitter, where they say something and you're like, oh no, please don't say that. Don't do that. This is one of those things. I absolutely adore the series that this woman writes. The woman is Donna Leon, and she writes a mystery series, the Commissario Brunetti series set in Venice. I love that series. This was not happening. This is My Venice and Other Essays. And it's this kind of collection of just like rants, just her kind of picking a topic and then just cranking on about it. And you get the sense that she thinks that you're going to be on her side, like, that's horrible, isn't it? Oh, watch what I did. And instead she comes off looking really entitled. She, like the cranky old lady who just doesn't want anybody to have any fun and is quick to criticize any and everything. So while there were a couple things that were interesting about Venice, I mean, by and large, the whole thing was a mess. I can't believe that I finished it. It was thin. It wasn't very big, but I skimmed a lot. And I really wish I hadn't even bothered to read it because I just don't want anything to soil my appreciation and enjoyment of the series that she writes, the fictional series she writes. But it is making me look a little different. Now, I had heard that she was a very not nice person, that she, through some people who work in the book selling community here in the city, that she had come through and was just really snobby, rude, callous, kind of full of herself. And I don't want to, I take all of that with a grain of salt, but after reading this, I mean, I totally see it. So I would advise, if you love that series, protect yourself. don't do what I did. Because it wasn't good. But let's talk about something that was outstanding. This also was from the Shakespeare and Company Year of Reading. Let me take off this flap. This one I will be keeping because this was something. This book is Peter Finds a Thing of Beauty, Travels in Mythical and Modern Greece. You have this really pretty cover, and the back is really lovely as well. This was quite something. How to talk about this? Maybe because I'm an American, even though I've traveled a lot, we are not, in America, we are not connected with religion through place, right? We don't have, if you are Christian, all of the Christian stuff happened in the Middle East. If you are a Buddhist, all the stuff happened in Asia. Maybe Mormons are the only ones who are rooted to things that happened here in this country. But other than that, our religious observations are not connected to place. Whereas this man, as he's traveling through Greece, he's really looking for the gods. He's looking for connection, and he wants answers. He's really having some emotional challenges to the state of the world. And he is looking for, for example, answers from the Oracle at Delphi. And as he's kind of traveling through Greece, he stops at these places that have connection to the gods, to the Greek gods. And he's thinking very deeply about the state of the world. And he's thinking about ecology. He's also dealing with the pandemic and issues of culture, issues of community, and what it looks like post-pandemic, or as we're entering in and then eventually we'll come out of a pandemic. What I found with this book was it's so open-hearted that it just felt so good. It felt really good to read something that isn't cynical, that isn't looking for the trick or assuming bad intent, but really keeping an open mind, keeping an open heart, and reflecting and really thinking deeply about the past, about the classics, about storytelling. What is what role does it play then and now? This was so beautiful. I'm absolutely going to keep this, and I'm going to reread it because I do want to go to Greece. And I find that what it did is it gave me a travel log of the classics. It's not just the classics that stand alone as a tale, but actually connected to place as he's kind of traveling through and trying to personally connect with these stories. I love the earnestness with which he included himself, and he talked about the types of things that he's looking for and why. And this was just such a different read. And I hope more people pick it up because I just thought it was a wonderful book. Now, a book, this is such a strange thing. So I've read this book about this author. I like the author less than I did or than I assumed to have done before reading this biography, and yet I'm more interested in her work. So the book is The Adventures of Miss Barbara Pym by Paula Byrne. I just love this cover. So I have really loved some Barbara Pym books and really not loved some Barbara Pym books. And so I was interested. I was really curious, who was this woman and what made her tick? This is an incredibly, incredibly thorough, almost a little too many details and too much quotidian information that I don't think was necessary, and it's so big. But it is very thorough about her life. And ultimately, she was a strange bird. She's somebody who I just get the sense that she's kind of boy crazy and remained so her entire life. She formed friends with men and had romantic attachments, whether sexual or not. but really wanted connection with men, was at the expense of or not caring about the women who may already be involved with them, may be interested in them, may be married to them. So she's kind of fixated and kind of prudish up to a certain point, and more flirty than she was actively, robustly engaging in sexual relationships with men, which makes sense for the time. But I think this becomes a pattern that establishes pretty early and goes through her entire life. She seems like she had women friends, but seems like her loyalties always lied either with herself or with the men. So there are many times when she does fairly despicable things with relations and or partners of her friends, which is really hard. It's disappointing. I really didn't expect that from Barbara Pym. She writes about church women. She writes about like the older spinster church women who help the parish. So knowing that she had this kind of focused desire to be with these men at any and all cost, it was really surprising. I absolutely did not expect that. There's a lot in here about Oxford, and I think I've made mention before how much I do love the city of Oxford, and so those parts I really, really enjoyed. I think she has a really good relationship with her sister, and later on in the years, they're companions to each other, and I think that's really tender, really beautiful. But she's always getting involved with the wrong men, and I think she doesn't. It doesn't seem like she ever learns her lesson, which is hard to keep seeing it over and over and over again. So I'm very glad that I read this. I'm very glad that I know a little bit more about her. Probably won't revisit this, but I do want to revisit her books now that I know a little bit more about her. I think that in of itself has been an interesting opportunity to spend a little bit more time with Ms. Barbara Pym. So that's it for now. I've read more, so I'm going to continue to talk, but this is just about enough time talking about these. So stay tuned and I'll wrap up a few more of my current reads for November. And I'll look forward to talking to you soon. But I'd love to know, have you read any of these and what were your thoughts? That's it. Thank you so much for watching and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.